This is Jim Bratton Podcast, a podcast exploring his personal interests, interviews with artists and musicians, as well as other creators, an opinion or two, or more, poetry and prose, ambient sound, binaural and ASMR, audio produced for meditation and relaxation, experimental sound or music, and those exploring aesthetic boundaries. You may enjoy some, or all, or none. Now, here's Jim.
Hi, this is Jim Bratton, and today we're talking to Stephen Smalzel. Stephen is a physicist and a traveling musician that we met in Galveston. Stephen, thank you very, very much for joining us. I know that's an abbreviated description of who you are and what you do, but let's expand on that then.
Well, thank you for having me, Jim. I'm not a physicist. I did get a degree in physics, and I worked for a short while at the National Bureau of Standards in Boulder, Colorado. But I decided that I didn't really want that career. I wanted to be a hobo more, and I became an artist. That's one you didn't get. That was most of my life. The music was just a side hobby. So I had a career as an artist, a decent, successful career. I didn't get famous, but I made a decent enough living, and music was on the side, and I always had a vehicle I could live in and work out of, because for the painting, living in Colorado, I would travel around and find landscapes to paint. I was a landscape painter. So that just morphed into really wanting a vehicle I could live and work out of, and I've always had one.
Studied physics, so I'll take it back and not say a physicist now, but you do have a degree in physics and had worked in the physics field. So where I'm going with that is that you were trained in the physical sciences and the linearity of physical science.
Yeah, analytical reasoning, figuring things out.
There you go. That's pretty applicable in many fields. When did you know that you were good in the visual arts and that you could pursue truly a career as an artist?
From fairly early on, I don't believe that you're born with art skills. Maybe there's a little bit of that. I think that that's a popular misconception. I think what you're born with is that you enjoy sitting quietly and working at things, and therefore you practice it a lot. And I know that was the case for me when I was really young. I, like every kid, draws at just, you get the crayons. Every kid does it. Some kids want to run around and throw rocks at each other. I mean, some kids are like that. I enjoyed sitting quietly. And of course, you do a few drawings and your parents or friends say, "Oh, that's lovely." And you think, "Oh, well, good for me." And you do more. That fit my personality. I think that's the more inborn part. There might be a little bit of mechanical skills you have, but I just don't believe it. The mechanical skills for art are fairly simple and straightforward, and they just take some practice. I don't think, like athletics, you're truly limited by your, physiology, your muscle makeup, and how quickly your brain processes things. And there's probably some of that in music too, is how quickly your muscles work, and maybe some inner workings of the brain. I just don't really think that's true with art. I was good at art though, because I did it a lot. And I took it all through high school, and I thought, well, I suppose I could do that. But physics and math were what I was really good at. And my parents were somewhat involved in that. So that was the direction for me. But by the time I got my undergraduate degree in engineering physics and was doing an internship that turned into a little job, I wanted to be free. I just wanted out for a while. And so I decided to try doing art. And really, it was just taking a break from the normal path of life. And I thought that it's okay to do that when you just have your undergraduate degree. If you're going to become a professional at that in the sciences, you've got to get a graduate degree And I thought there's no real penalty for taking a little break once you've completed your undergraduate degree. So I just started painting, and that was it. I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed being, I've always enjoyed being a bit of a hobo. That's
That's right.
always
You
appealed to me.
alluded to that. I'm just still marveling at you making the transition from physical science to art, and that took, frankly, a lot of nerve because you left a real job
Yeah.
and went into something that many people would not consider a real job. You
No, and that's a valid, that's valid. I turned down a job offer at MIT to do the exact research. I wasn't a researcher. I was a research assistant, and it was in high temperature superconductivity,
Oh,
which
wow,
was a
that's a
big.
hot topic.
It was right when the high temperature superconductors had been discovered. This is what, early 90s
Right.
or into the 80s. And universities were setting up labs to research it. It was the biggest field in solid state physics. So I got a job to be a grunt at MIT, and I just thought, I can't do this. And it was risky. I don't I didn't make that much money at art, and I wouldn't recommend it if you're worried
Did
about
you
having a living.
did you do an overlap? I mean, I'm y- you were a good artist, but how did you sort of build a market? Did you have an abrupt stop and then build a market, or were you sort of doing it as a side gig as you were a physicist or as you were working in the physics lab?
No, I had quit the physics, and I moved with a friend to San Juan Island off the coast of Washington.
Yeah,
And we were being, just post college, young and wild and having fun. I worked in a restaurant there and painted all the time. And then when the weather rolled in the fall, I ended up in Santa Barbara, California, and continued that process. I worked in a cafe there and started painting. And then I started selling paintings. The first painting I sold, this is funny. I was in a park in Santa Barbara just painting some trees.
right.
And a guy who was doing some sort of public work ends up he was on public work parole for a drunk driving conviction. He said, "I like that painting. You want to sell it to me?" And I sold it. I remember it so well. He gave me $40. That's what he had on him. And I started that painting that morning, and I thought, well, there we go. That's pretty good. A guy on public work parole just gave me $40 or something that took me 3 hours. I'm like, this might fly. Uh, and that was it. But it was really a long process. The trick for me was living on nothing. I got every kind of handout I could. I dumpster dove. I thought that was funny. I thought it was neat. Uh, it's easy to make money in America. Anyone who says otherwise should go overseas. It's, I thought if this really flails, I can always paint houses. I mean, it's not hard, or go back to physics.
Yeah,
Uh,
or wait tables again, or whatever.
yeah. And
Interesting,
so,
interesting observation that you made. Yes, and I agree. There is a way to make money.
yeah, it isn't that hard. You have to be creative and good about it, but uh, you do, I think, any art you're pursuing, though, you got to be committed and be willing to suffer. I'm thinking of other friends who were good at some art, but sort of took their side jobs to keep them going, and they became careers. I'm thinking right now of a really good writer in Boulder, and he had gotten a few things published, but he painted houses on the side.
Right.
40 years later, he's had a big house painting company with lots of employees. It's gone commercial, but that's it. He's not a writer
So
anymore.
his side gig became
Took over.
his vocation.
Nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with that, but you do have to be pretty committed, and most of the arts are low paying things you might want to do. Yeah, they aren't, there's no guarantee there. And there's plenty of people who do that, totally dedicate to it, and they end up not living very good lives because they can't survive. So
Well,
it's a pretty valid something to chew on.
I think that, and this is just my opinion only, is as a holder of a technical degree as well, I think the
Uh-huh.
discipline required to get a degree in science, engineering, any of the, what do I call, linear physical sciences,
Yeah.
you just take some discipline.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you
Even at
don't get
work.
through. It's that simple. And I think you can take that to any career. In your case, visual art, and what music, and in my case, spoken word and narration. But it
Yeah,
doesn't come easy.
you've got to put in some serious hours uh at any of those things. I mean, I really think that's the crux to most everything. There's better ways to practice and get good, but it really, the bottom line is, have you put in the time? And it takes a way longer than you want. Certainly with painting for me, it took a long time before I felt competent, and that continued to grow throughout my career. And right now, as more in retirement, I'm giving myself time to really play music, and it's frustrating how long it takes to develop skills.
Let's talk
Uh,
about this transition now. And how many years, and now, if you don't mind me asking, how many years
mhm.
were you into specializing in the visual arts side, and then transitioning into the music?
I'd say at least 35. Let me put a number on that. Yeah, I'll say about 35 years I had an art career. Um, in the first 10 years of that, I probably wasn't making a lot of money, or certainly the first 5 years, and then it grew from there. And then I started making you know, what would we call it? A civil servant's wage, a school teacher's
Yeah,
wage, and that's about what I came out with.
that's a fair deal. That's
Yeah, it's
that
easy.
that makes you a
It's
working professional artist.
Yeah, and I was at the end of it. I feel pretty good about that. And then the music, I'm just doing for fun. I
When
always
did you
really
be when
loved.
okay, when did you begin to move toward the music side then?
I played music the whole time through, uh, but I didn't take it very seriously. I did when I was young, high school. I thought music was the greatest. I liked it better than art. And I do to this day. I think it's a little more immediate pathway to the emotions than visual art is. But I wasn't as naturally good at it. And I'm not much of a performer, in that I don't do well performing. Most people are like that. It's hard to get in front of people. Art is easy. You can do it quietly in your room. Some people aren't suited for that. They just don't like being holed up, working quietly on their own. That's
Right.
not good or bad. It's just what your personality is. My personality is I'm super happy being holed up, working on my own. So the art made more sense for me. And I was probably just technical skill better when I was young. So I always had the music, but I didn't really practice. So I was a fireside player, and I, slowly got a little better at that.
Right.
Uh, and then when I just, as towards the end of my art career, I started trying a little bit more with music. And then when I really burned out on the art, and because I
Well,
never had
let me
kids,
back
I
up on
could,
the art career just a
uh-huh,
little bit, and we'll finally, our primary purpose of this whole series is the vagabond lifestyle and the
yeah,
band that you've outfitted. We may get to that in our next episode, by the way, as we've created the
uh-huh,
background that led to that. But
yeah.
the were you on the road with your art most of the time then?
It was split for me. I generally spent my most of my time in Colorado. I lived in
Right.
Boulder, Colorado, and then moved to Salida, Colorado. And I would spend all the summers uh, doing gallery stuff, making frames, painting. And then I got to, in the heart of the winters, I would travel and do it, most of my paintings. That was often overseas to poor countries,
Uh-huh.
sometimes in a van, say going down to Arizona. And that was solely because I wanted to paint outside. Uh, so I would generally have 4 months where I do a super intensive on the actual painting and not finish all the paintings. And then I'd bring them back and work on them in the spring, summer, fall in Colorado and do all the other parts of the art world. And the other part is as big as the actual painting. finishing the paintings, making frames, getting them in
Absolutely.
galleries, having shows. So I was a bit of a combo. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. So beginning a number of years ago,
hmm
you began to outfit yourself for the road then. Am I reading between the lines properly here?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't so much a conscious thing, like a thought out plan. I started one of my first projects in art. I was still living in Boulder, Colorado. I was just a couple years into deciding I was going to be an artist. I decided I would paint all of the 14,000-foot peaks in Colorado because they are quite famous. That's a big deal. And I thought, well, uh, that'll be good. I mean, I guess that came out because I had won the Pikes Peak Marathon. I was a pretty good marathon runner. And I thought that's great promo for doing an art show of all the 14,000-foot peaks.
Right.
So with that project, I had a beat old Subaru then, and I had taken all the seats out so I could get my art gear back there and sleep in that. And I traveled around and went to each of the 14,000-foot peaks in Colorado and painted them. That took a whole season, then another half season to finish them up. Um, so that was really the beginning of traveling with the art in a vehicle. And I liked that. That was great. So the next vehicle I got, it was a Ford Ranger truck. I actually traded some paintings for that.
Right.
And I sort of outfitted that a little bit more to be something I could live out of comfortably and paint out of. And then I went through, over the next 30 years, a succession of 5 vehicles or so that some of them I built up myself, some were set up. So I've had a lot of live-in vehicles, none of them particularly large, nothing beyond sort of large van size, not to RVs.
Right.
Um,
Wow.
so that's how that evolved.
Did I'm sorry, I'm pausing because I find all of this so intriguing. Starting off with an
Uh-huh.
F-150, that's just great.
Well, it was a Ford Ranger. It was
Or
even
the Ranger,
smaller.
I'm sorry.
It
Oh,
was
yes, that's the smaller than the F-150.
no, but it's funny because I did end up with an F-150 in Salida. That again was a painting trade. The local car dealer wanted some paintings. He said, "I'll trade you a vehicle for some paintings." Had moved into a new house, so ended up with an F-150 out of that, and and they were great. You can do a pretty good job with the truck. In fact, the building a truck out is a great way to start because trucks tend to be cheap
Yeah.
and they're really easy to turn into a camper. You just take one of those standard toppers for the back, which are a dime a dozen on Craigslist,
Yes.
and then you just visualize just lifting that up vertically for 2 feet
Yeah.
by building a plywood box, an essential that sits on the sides of the truck. And there you go. You've got a camper, and it's a very easy thing to build. You just get some 2x2s and some 3/8 inch sheet plywood and build a 2 foot high extension vertically of the truck walls, and then put a cheap as can be standard, what are those called? Toppers
Yeah.
uh, on top of that. And that makes a pretty good camper. You can build a stand up thing back there, bolt it together. You can do that in about 3 days.
And bolted on securely, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, absolutely. Yeah. I did two of those, the Ford Ranger and then the full size pickup, and they worked great. Um, I would say the only downside of that is you're losing all the space in the driving compartment from your living space, which isn't a big deal, but trying to get space in a smaller vehicle, that it's awfully nice to have the driving space connected to the back as it is in any van. Um,
Right. That there is a sense of that open space of the continuity of space, I guess. But
yeah,
I'm
you
just
can get
I'm intrigued with your innovation as you did this. And we've taken up probably most of the time for our podcast
okay.
number one. However, let's talk about what we're going to do the next time, so our
Okay.
listeners will know what to look forward to. I think we'll try to talk about finally getting to the van that you're driving now, and the
Okay.
build out criteria that went into it, and sort of that. And I'd like to talk more about what it's like spending as much time on the road as you do and living out of a van and the compromises that you've had to make, if any, particularly living as a musician now as
Hmm.
opposed to a visual artist.
Yeah.
It's been a real pleasure talking. I've learned so much from you and could talk forever to you. And with your permission, we'll go ahead and do a series of these podcasts and just talk about this whole evolution to where and to where it is now.
Sounds good, Jim.
Stephen, thank you for your time very much.
This has been Jim Bratton Podcast. We hope you have enjoyed, been inspired, informed, angered, or otherwise emotionally stimulated. This is your booth announcer, Sierra Sakel.